Our next speaker, the last one before me, is Dr. Shanita Brown. And it's funny because honestly, I was trying to remember how I first met Shanita, and I cannot remember because Shanita has just been everywhere. She does so much good work related to domestic violence advocacy in the counseling profession all across North Carolina. I know that we first connected when you were first a student in the counseling department at NC State in their doctoral program. And she is also going on and doing so many great things. Now she's working as a speaker, educator, counselor, and administrator. And truly, when I think about people who are passionate advocates about domestic violence, and supporting survivors of abuse, Shanita is just one of the top people that come to mind. She is so genuine in her passion for this population and has done so much work. And I know that she's got a book in the works too. She's, I don't know if she's going to tell you about it at all, but she's got some great initiatives that she's working on too. And so I just knew I wanted to have her be part of today's event, and I was so thankful when she agreed as well. And so what I've asked Shanita to speak about is one of the most common topics that I get. So I've been doing this work related to domestic violence for a long time. And so, you know, when you work in an area like this, you get a lot of questions from people who are, you know, need to know, or they have questions about it. And far more often than I get questions about people asking about their own experiences or needing help from themselves, almost all of the questions I get usually are from people saying, I have a sister, I have a cousin, I have a friend, I have a coworker, I have a student. You know, it's pretty much almost a neighbor. It's pretty much almost any kind of possible configuration of relationship. Is how can I help a friend or a family member or another loved one or somebody that I care about? And so that's such an important topic, and knowing that we've got a mix of people who have personal experiences, as well as those who don't have those personal experiences, but we can all play a role in being really supportive of other people in our life when they're in abusive relationship, as well as throughout the recovery process. So Shanita, thank you for being here today, and I will turn it over to you so we can hear some of your insights on how to support family and friends.
Thank you so much, Christine. I am so honored and humbled to be a part of this project. You're right, we go back when I first reached out to you when I was a doc student. And Christine, at the time when I was a doc student, I didn't know too many people, too many counselor educators who were doing this work. So I reached out to her, and she offered me opportunities to help with See the Triumph. Whenever I wanted to consult with her about something for my dissertation, about anything I was writing in the profession, but she said, yes, do it, we need more. And so as my dear colleague Allison said, as scholars and academics, we write and publish. That's what we're required to do. But I think it's also important, as Christine is doing, that we find practical ways to share our research. And again, she's been that person for me to kind of, how do I share my research? So yes, I am excited to be working on a book. I primarily work with survivors of color, and learning in my own research, we do not have enough practical tools for survivors of color. So I'm working on that book. So I'm elated to see another project. And so as Christine was talking about, how can we support survivors? I get that call a lot, even in my own personal family, friends. And I would tell them the first thing is to listen with love, and to lead with love. We can never go wrong. The journey to healing from an abusive relationship, that abusive recovery process, is very challenging. It's very complex. It is so important that we create a very safe, non-judgmental environment for survivors to be able to talk about their experiences. It's so important that we believe them. It's so important that we remind them of the courage, of the brave decision, that we do our very due diligence to empower them. It's so important to reassure them that you love them, that it wasn't their fault. A lot of times, and I've been in the mental health field for 20 years and so, and working with survivors in various settings, a lot of times, even after they're out of the relationship, they're somehow still connected to the abuser or perpetrator. So a lot of times family members would say, oh, we're done now. And friends would say, oh, they're out of the relationship. but they're somehow still connected. And so it's so important to understand the dynamic and the effects of trauma on the survivor, especially if they have children, and how that creates another barrier of more challenges that they're trying to move forward to that state of healing and that recovery process. Remembering to allow the survivors to have control of their decisions. They have been in manipulative situations for quite some time. And so while we want to say, hey, let's do this, let's do that, you should do this now, you should do that now, it's so important to allow them to make the decision and be okay with that decision. You know, this is their journey. And do what you can. I think it's very important to do what you can as a family member or friend to learn what you can about domestic violence. Learn about the impact of trauma, learning about some self-care strategies for yourself, because you're part of that lifeline, you're part of that recovery process. And it's so important that we recognize the role that we have, but recognize how we can be a part of that empowerment circle and the healing journey. So when I think about practical advice or practical assistance, if you're off, I would tell a person to say, hey, call up a survivor and say, I'm off today. I can watch your children. I have some time. How can I support you? What do you need today? And let them be able to tell you what they need, and be okay if they say they don't know. And this is a lot. And I can just tell you that when you listen with love and lead with love, you can never go wrong. And that in itself is providing the empowerment and the constant encouragement to know that they can move forward, and that they're not alone in the healing journey. So those are my tips. And remember, it's very complex, and it's a journey, and be willing to be open on that journey, and do what you can as well to learn about domestic violence.